Kasi meron siyang pandikit sa likuran. Thank you sa Shopee. Ayan na siya. Ang ganda-ganda niya. Sayo na ako dyan. Meron lang akong maliit na wallpaper na binili. Ganyan na siya kaliit. 5 pesos lang ata yan. Tapos ito, 25 pesos each. Yung dalawang maliit na yan. Tapos ito, nasa 50 pesos each. So, nasa 98 lang yung binayaran ko. Parang 24 lang ata yan. Dalawang yan. Tapos, free shipping siya. Ang ganda. So, mamaya i-reveal ko yung Shopee account ng seller kasi nagupit ni mama yung name ng Shopee. Ayan, ang ganda niya. Yun lang.
7 things poor people do that the rich don't. Number 1, poor people watch TV and rich people read books. Number 2, poor people get paid based on time, rich people get paid based on results. Number 3, poor people, they blame others for their misfortunes. Rich people, we take responsibility for our own failures. Number 4, poor people focus on saving and rich people focus on investing. Number 5, poor people, they know it all. Rich people continuously to learn. Number 6, poor people believe that money is the root of all evil. Rich people, we believe that poverty is the root of all evil. Number 7, poor people, they have lottery mentality, and rich people, we have action mentality.
Thank you, Mama. Ayoko niyan. Thank you, Mama.
Uy, huwag ka na mahiya. Kumustahin mo ako. Okay lang yan. Parang others too. Di ba naalala mo? Nung chinismis mo yung buhay ko, wala ka rin hiya, di ba? Ito.
23 years old siya na may 230,000 na pesos na savings. Ano daw magandang investment na low risk na hindi na kailangan bantayan? Well, marami yan. May time deposit, may government bonds, no? Pero para sa akin, yung parang mas fair pa, ay maganda mag-invest siguro sa Pag-ibig MP2. Ang Pag-ibig, kailangan membro ka ng Pag-ibig. Pagkatapos niyan, ang mga interest po niyan, more or less nagre-range yan 6 to 8% interest per annum, depende on the fund performance. Ang pros nito, hawak to ng government, returns, no? Maganda siya, tapos non-taxable to, and then ang minimum amount lang kailangan mo ilagay is 500 pesos. Pero ang cons lang nito is 5 years mo siyang iiwan, 5 years. So, kung hindi mo siya gagamitin sa 5 years time, maganda na subukan nyo po yung Pag-ibig MP2. Kaya mga friends, para sa mga diskarte investment tips pa, all you need to do is subscribe on this channel.
Gusto niyo din ba ng minimalist cabinet drawer pero mura? Tara na't pagpabudol mga mommies and babies. Sabay-sabay ko na dapat bubuksan yung mga parcels ko, kaso itong kapatid ko nagmamadali ng i-assemble to. Ayan, dalawa sila ni Habi magkakabit-kabit niyan. Sobrang okay to para sa mahilig mag-organize. Sa lahat ng order ko sa Shopee, dito ako pinaka-na-excite. Kasi ang tagal-tagal na ito dumating eh. As you can see, maganda yung pagka-packaging sa kanya, kaya safe na dumating sa amin. Madami ako nakitang cabinet sa Shopee, pero ito lang yung kaisa-isang nagustuhan ko. Ayan, isang color lang yung available, which is white. Tapos ayan, parang PVC yung texture niya. Hindi siya kahoy, pero hindi rin plastic. Sobrang nagustuhan ko to. Sana pala dalawa nang in-order ko. Ayan, tignan nyo. Sobrang minimalist na lang. Pabudol na kayo. Link in my bio.
Okay ba kumuha ng foreclosed property sa bangko or let's say sa Pag-ibig? Yes, definitely. Alam mo kung may capacity ka na makabili ka ng foreclosed property ay maganda rin po siyang investment kasi ang foreclosed property is way below the market value. Kunyari, ang market value ng isang property ay nasa 15,000 pesos per square. Malamang. Baka makuha mo siya ng 12,000 to 10,000 pesos per square. From there pa lang, up ka na. That's number 1. Number 2, ang kagandahan din doon sa mga foreclosed properties ay hindi na ganun kataas at saka nag-depreciate na ang presyo ng mga properties na yan. Like for example, lalo na kung may bahay po yan, depreciated na po yung value. So, nabibili nyo siya, hindi siya brand new, depreciated na siya. So, likewise with sasakyan, ganun din po. May mga foreclosed na mga sasakyan din. Let's say, binili na ng brand new na 1 million yan. Pag foreclosed na yan, ang ibebenta na lang sa inyo, siguro nasa 600,000. Ang kagandahan, mababa pamilyahin yan. So, check them out, no? Maganda itong mga opportunity na ito. These are the good ways for you to really grow and invest your money. For more money tips, no? All you need to do is just follow me on this channel. Friends, story time tayo. Who wants this 1,000 pesos? Part 2. May part 2 to. May isang teacher, inangat yung 1,000 pesos, tinanong sa mga estudyante sa klase niya, sino sa inyo gusto ng 1,000? Diba? Lahat nagtaasan ng kamay. Nagtanong ulit ang teacher, sino sa inyo gusto ng 1,000 na ito? Marami pa rin nagtaas ng kamay. And the teacher asked for the third time, sino talaga sa inyo gusto ng 1,000 piso na ito? And then out of the entire classroom, isang tao lang, sa huling-huli pa, tumayo, tumakbo, diba? At kinuha yung 1,000 sa teacher. Nagulat ang mga estudyante. Oo. Tapos alam sinabi ng teacher, congratulations, sa iyo na ang 1,000. Anong leksyon na makuha natin sa buhay po? The only time that you can have what you want in life, if you are willing to take the risk, stand up, go for it, and grab the opportunity. The question is this: are you a type of a person who wait for things to happen, or you make things happen? Something to think about. Okay, may napasukan daw siyang networking. Ang tanong niya, ano daw gagawin niya pas marami siya pang ma-invite. Okay, alam mo, timing, I like to share with you on how you can really become successful in the business of network marketing or in sales. Kailangan, anim ang kailangan mo matutunan, i-master mo. Number 1, prospecting. Second, setting of appointment, presentation, closing, follow-up, and training. Okay, let's talk about prospecting. Prospecting po is a manner of to know if that person is the right client or not. Alam mo, the single most wasteful thing that you can do is talking to a wrong client. Alam mo, kahit na gusto mong kumita yung kaibigan mo, gusto mong bentahan, pero if he's the wrong person, wrong client, you're just wasting time. Alam mo, kaya nga napapagod, na-frustrate minsan yung mga nagbebenta, yung mga nag-i-invite, dahil po nga, yung ini-invite mo mismo, alam mong kailangan niya ng pera, pero ayaw niya na kumita. That's number 1. Number 2 is never prejudge anyone in the business. Let me tell you this truth. People you expect to join will never join, and people you least expect to join, they will join. People you expect to buy will never buy from you, and people you least expect to buy, they will buy from you. Grabe, yan ang reality talaga, I'm sure. Kung ikaw na-experience niya, you know what I'm talking about. And then number 3, always remember, prospecting is a numbers game. Alam mo, kailangan talaga, you need to talk to people. Especially in this time right now, you need to learn how to post in social media. So, ang tawag natin dyan is attraction marketing. Instead of you begging people to come and join your business, let them beg you to ask your business, what your business is all about, what is your product all about. So, if you want to learn more, actually, lahat ng tinuro ko sa inyo ngayon, yung shinare ko sa inyo, came from one page of my book. Yung How I Made My First Million in Direct Selling, or like for example, if you are in real estate, insurance, network marketing, basahin nyo tong libro na ito, How I Made My First Million. Actually, nandito yan sa page 92 and 93. 92, 93, and 94. Lahat nandito yun. Okay? Yung shinare ko po sa inyo. Actually, itong shinare ko po sa kanina, 2 to 3 pages lang of this book. So if you want to learn more, all you need to do is just go to the shop, okay, chinkshop.com. Hanapin nyo na itong librong How I Made My First Million Direct Selling. And guys, this may be the best investment that you can make. Actually, maliit lang na investment, pero pag ikaw ay kumita, malaki na ang pwede mong kitain dito. I always tell people, nakasulat rin sa libro ko, the first million is the hardest, but the next ones are easy pag natuto ka na. So, order right now.
So sabi ng mama ko, bawal daw muna magjowa nung high school. Sa college na lang daw. Eh di nag-college na ako. Tinanong ko siya ulit, sabi niya pagkatapos ko lang daw mag-college. Nung gumraduate na ako, sabi niya pag may trabaho na lang daw ako. Ngayon may trabaho na ako, ubos na lahat ng lalaki. Salamat ma! Salamat!
I'm Ethan. The day I graduated high school, my dad told me he needed to talk to me. He said, "Are you planning to keep living in this house?" I told him I had nowhere else to go. I've been taking care of you for years. You need to start working if you want to stay in this house. You either start bringing in some money or find yourself another place to live. I graduated from high school with a high GPA. I wanted to go to college to be able to get a good job later. My family is not doing well financially. I obviously know this, so I was thinking, I'll get a part-time job and I won't be a burden to them. But working part-time meant I could only cover my own expenses. There was no way I could bring in enough money to make my dad happy. So I had to drop out of college. A friend's father owned a moving company. I started working there. They specialized in moving furniture from luxury homes. All of our clients were rich families. Since the furniture was really valuable, we were packing and carrying it very carefully. It was a really stressful job. I had to be super careful all the time. If I were to cause the slightest damage, I would have to work for months, without pay. Like my mom, I was giving all the money I was making to my dad. But our financial situation had not changed. We could never pay the rent on time. It was all my dad's fault. He was spending a lot of money on himself. As soon as I started working, he bought himself a better car. My mom had been complaining about him blowing through money for years, but my dad would just get angry. We couldn't say anything because we were scared of him. One day, we were helping a wealthy client move as usual. The lady who owned the house called me over. We went down to the basement together. She showed me a few pieces of furniture. Pack these up and take them to the truck. The rest is garbage. You can put it all in the trash, she said. First, I carried the items the lady showed me to the truck. Then I started filling up a big bag with the things I was supposed to discard. I came across a roll of paper. Just as I was about to throw it out, I got curious and unrolled it. It was a charcoal drawing. It was simple, but very pretty. I couldn't just throw it away. I went up to the lady. "This is beautiful. Do you really want us to throw it out?" I said. She took a look at the drawing. "My grandfather loved art. It must be his. You're right. Throwing it away would be disrespectful to his memory," she said. She rolled up the drawing and put it in her bag. My phone rang while I was at another house a few weeks later. It was my boss. "A client wants to see you. She's in our office now. Can you come over?" he said. I was really scared. Was something lost during a move? Or did we damage some furniture? I thought about all the bad things that could have happened until I got to the office. I stepped into the boss's office. The lady who'd been waiting for me got up with a big smile on her face. "You remember that drawing you brought me instead of throwing it away? It turned out to be a portrait of my grandfather, and it was made by Picasso. They met in a bar in Madrid. Picasso really liked my grandfather and wanted to give him a gift. He asked the waiter for a pen and paper and drew his portrait. We obviously didn't want to sell it because of its sentimental value. However, my husband and I decided to give you a small reward. If it hadn't been for you, this drawing would have ended up in the trash," she said. Then she handed me an envelope. I looked at my boss. "I'm proud of you, Ethan," he said with a smile. I was a little embarrassed but took the envelope from her. I left the office and sat on a bench outside. I wanted to know what was inside the envelope. I opened it. There was a check. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw the amount on it. It was almost 5 times my annual salary. I thought of my dad right away, and of course my joy quickly turned into sadness. If I gave this money to him, he would spend it all on himself and not on our family. Both my mom and I had been stunned when we saw a gold chain around his neck one day. It was preposterous of him to spend money on something like that when we were having trouble paying our bills. Put yourself in my shoes. If you had such a father and came into some money, would you give it to him? One of my best friends, Travis, is studying economics in college. I gave him a call. I told him I had some money and asked him how to invest it. He's smart as a whip. "You called me at the right time. I've been trading tech stocks for a while. It's going really well. If you want, I can do that for you as well, but I have to tell you it's quite risky. There's no middle ground in the stock market. You either lose big or win big," he said. I trusted him, and anyway, that money had fallen into my lap. "I'm gonna give you half. The rest will be enough for me to live on," I told him. But unfortunately, things didn't go as well as Travis expected. He quickly burned through the money I gave him. He kept calling me to apologize. I didn't even understand why we were losing because I didn't know the first thing about the stock market. But as I said, I trusted Travis. I gave him the rest of my money as well. I got this money because I was lucky. "Something tells me I will get lucky again," I said. It turns out I was right. This time, Travis was constantly calling me to give me good news. We were both rich. You know what's really weird? I was getting cash from Travis since I didn't even have a bank account. But where would I keep all that cash? I thought about it for a while and finally decided to hide it in cardboard boxes in our attic. When I'd fill up a box, I'd get another one. My dad would totally lose it if he found out. Our attic was stuffed with money. So much so that I didn't even know how much money I had. One night, I decided to count all of it. It took me until the morning. As the sun came up, I realized I was a millionaire, and this was only a fraction of my total wealth. I quit my job the next day. I told my boss I had decided to go to college. But it wasn't true. I had begun to think I didn't even need a college education anymore. Every morning, I'd leave the house as if I were going to work and hang out with Travis or in a coffee shop. In the evening, I'd come back home as if returning from work. After a while, I bought myself a car just because the attic was too full and I had to get rid of some cash. I actually don't like sports cars very much, but I picked one of the most expensive sports cars so that I could make some room in the attic. There were still a lot of boxes. I bought a huge house to get rid of even more money and make space in the attic. And now I had a place to go during the day as well. You might be wondering why I didn't leave home, why I still continued to live with my family this whole time. I didn't want to leave my mom and my sister alone with my dad. I was sure he was going to treat them worse once I was gone. One evening, my dad said, "Call your mother and sister. I want to talk to all of you." A few minutes later, we were all standing in front of him. "I quit my job today. I've been working for years to keep this family going. I took care of you, but I'm tired now. From now on, I'm not going to work. You're going to look after me," he said with a smirk. Then he turned to my sister. "Sheila, you're quitting school too. The free ride you've been getting in this house is over. Everyone has to bring in money," he said. Sheila burst into tears straight away. "My mom couldn't keep silent. I've been working for years just like you. This is all nonsense. Won't you feel any shame loafing around the house while we toil away?" she screamed. When my dad started getting mad and charging towards my mom, I took her by the arm and led her outside. "Mom, don't be upset. I'll save both of you from this man. Give me some time," I said. My mom thanked me, thinking that I was saying these things just to comfort her. After everyone was asleep, I went up into the attic. I took a few photos when the place was filled to the brim with money. Then I spent all night moving the money to my new house. Actually, I should have done this earlier. I kept putting it off, thinking there was no rush. I came back the next morning. I parked my car in front of the house. I honked the horn. First, my mom and sister came out, then my dad. All three of them were staring at me and at the car. I asked my dad, "Do you know whose car this is?" "How should I know? I guess it's your boss's," he said. "No, Dad, this car is mine. I bought it with my own money," I said. My dad couldn't say anything. He was literally speechless. That morning, I'd gone to a print shop and had them print out the photo I took of the attic in poster size. I showed it to my dad. "Does this place look familiar to you?" I asked. Dad stuttered. Is that our attic? Whose money is that?" "Just like this car, I earned all that myself," I said. My dad was stunned. "I'm your father. That money is mine too," he yelled. I started to laugh as he turned to walk back to the house. He thought the money was still in the attic. "The attic is empty now. I moved all of it to my own house last night," I said. As a last resort, my dad started buttering me up. "You're my favorite child. I've always been good to you. I'm sure you love me too," that kind of thing. But we both knew none of this was true. It's been 4 months since this happened. Right now, I live with my mom and my sister. My dad calls one of us every single day. Of course, no one answers. To me, he texts, "My dearest son, I love you so much. I miss you a lot." To my sister, he writes, "My beautiful princess, you got me wrong. I'm gonna send you to college." He can't find us since he doesn't know where we live. I'm sure he is really mad at us, but he hides it well, because all he can think about is the money he saw in that photo. He is so naive to think that he could fool me with his fake words of love.
Hi friends, my name is Boris. My grandfather passed away last year. He was a very successful realtor. He specialized in expensive properties. That's how he kept building his fortune year after year. He became one of the richest people in the country. He was also known for being a curmudgeon, to the point that people avoided making eye contact with him. I rarely saw him smile. He was a good man, but he had a bad temper. He became even more intolerable after my grandmother died. He seemed to be trying to take out the pain of losing his wife of 50 years on people around him. My dad has 2 siblings, both brothers. They each have 1 kid, and they're also boys. So my grandfather has 3 sons and 3 grandsons. He bought 4 houses right next to each other. He lived in one of them, and his kids lived in the others. We lived in the house closest to my grandparents. The first thing I did every morning was to visit them. We always had breakfast together. We had a special connection. Unlike my grandfather, my grandmother was very affectionate. She always told me, "Boris, you're a good kid. You're our favorite grandson. I want you to know this. Your grandfather doesn't talk about these things, but you can be sure that he feels the same way about you." Unlike me, my cousins never went to visit them. Once, my older cousin Matt said, "I've never met anyone more obnoxious than Grandpa. If I see him on the street on my way home, I go through the backyard just to avoid him." My other cousin Ben didn't like my grandfather either. He used to say that to his parents and me every chance he got. Even though my grandfather was incredibly wealthy, the only thing he did for his children was to give each of them a house. Other than that, he never gave his sons any money, but my dad never complained about this. He always told me, "Your grandfather wanted his kids to stand on their own feet." I'm grateful to him for that. He did the right thing. My cousins treated my getting along with my grandparents as a joke. They'd say, "They always give us the same gifts for our birthdays." That's how we know your sucking up to our grandfather isn't working. It used to bother me when they'd say stuff like that, but eventually I realized they were just saying it because they were jealous of me. The prospect of my grandfather leaving me his fortune made them uncomfortable. In fact, they were afraid of it. Before long, my suspicions about my cousins were proven true. My grandfather was diagnosed with lung cancer. I was the first person he told this news. One morning, I went to visit him as I always did. He looked terrible. He obviously hadn't gotten any sleep that night. He showed me his lung x-rays. "I'll soon be joining your grandmother. I should be feeling happy about that, but instead I'm afraid. Does this make me a bad husband?" he asked. That day, I saw his human side for the first time. That surly old man we were used to was replaced with a nice old man who was afraid of dying. After they found out about my grandfather's illness, my cousins started visiting him all the time. Matt, who used to avoid him, started visiting him several times a day. At first, I thought they changed their attitude because they were sad about him being sick. But soon, their true intentions became clear. They wanted to get a piece of their grandfather's fortune. One evening, Ben called me. He said, "We need to talk." When I got to the coffee shop where we were supposed to meet, Matt was there too. I was wondering what this was about. Matt jumped right in. "Boris, has Grandpa drawn up his will yet? Do you know how he's going to divide the inheritance?" I was shocked. It disturbed me so much that while he was struggling with cancer, my cousins were after his money. "I have no idea. And I don't care," I said. "In fact, I find it really odd that this is what you're thinking about right now. I don't think this is right," I went on. Ben said, "Of course you're not worried. You did everything you could to get along with Grandpa." "And what about us? How are we going to get our money?" I didn't like the way he was talking. "What are you talking about? I loved Grandma and I love Grandpa. That's why I always had a good relationship with them." Matt said, "I'm really curious about what you could love about Grandpa. You're not fooling us. We know what you're up to. Do you think we're stupid?" Now this was too much. My grandfather is struggling with a terrible disease. I couldn't care less about the will or the inheritance. I just want him to live as long as possible. I don't care what you think. You only remind me of vultures, I said, and left. I wish I'd never seen their faces again after that day. Unfortunately, that wasn't possible. I visited my grandfather more often now because I wanted to spend more time with him. Every time I went over there, Matt or Ben were there. One would leave and the other would show up. I can't even tell you how fake they were. "Grandpa, I made coffee for you. Grandpa, I brought you a pillow so you'll be comfortable. Grandpa, do you want to watch a movie?" I was disgusted by them because I knew what they were up to. But I wasn't about to tell my grandfather any of this. It would be so unfair to burden him with something like this. In fact, my grandfather seemed happy with what was going on. It was weird, but he was always chatting with them. I guess he had softened up since he didn't have a lot of time left. My cousins were taking advantage of this change. They were naturally very happy that he was treating them well. They were now sure that he would include them in his will. And they had probably started making plans about what to do with the money that they would inherit. One morning, what I was fearing finally happened. I knocked on my grandfather's door. He didn't answer. I rang the bell for a long time, still nothing. I guess because I was expecting this, I knew right away that we'd lost him. The next day, my cousins were already talking about money. I was right behind them at the funeral. They didn't notice that I was there. Matt said, "The lawyer just called my dad. He told the whole family to come to his office tomorrow. He's going to read my grandfather's will." Ben giggled, saying, Yes, we're gonna be rich tomorrow. I didn't want to go to the lawyer's office. I told this to my father that night. He put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Your grandfather instructed his lawyer to read his will in front of the whole family. I think he donated all of his money to charity. Your uncles also think so. So tomorrow we'll all be there just as a formality." I agreed to go. Plus, it would be fun to see how upset my cousins would get once their dreams of getting rich got crushed. We were in the lawyer's office early next morning. 3 sons, 3 daughters-in-law, and of course, 3 grandsons. Ben leaned towards me. He whispered, "For years, you put up with Grandpa for nothing. See, we made it to the same level as you in just 4 months. I think he even liked us more than you. We'll find out in a minute." When the lawyer took out the will, I glanced towards Matt and Ben. They were giddy with excitement. The lawyer began reading the document. "My dear family, right now I'm with my beloved wife. I don't think you're gonna miss an ill-tempered old man like me. I'm not gonna take much of your time with this silly will business. I'll dive right in. You know, life has been very generous with me, and I've amassed a substantial fortune. My dear sons, I didn't let you live a rich man's life because I wanted you to stand on your own 2 feet. You understood me well, and you did everything on your own. I don't think you need any more money. Please continue in the same manner. I love you and my daughters-in-law very much." After the lawyer read all this, I saw my dad and my uncle smile. My older uncle said, "Just as would be expected of Dad. You didn't surprise us. We love you too. Our dear Dad, rest in peace." Meanwhile, Matt and Ben were holding their breath, waiting without a peep. The lawyer kept reading the will. "After they found out about my illness, my dear grandsons Matt and Ben remembered that they actually had a grandfather. I have to admit that it was most entertaining to watch you falling all over me to get a slice of the inheritance. I guess you took me for a naive old man. I didn't say anything because I know I'm not easy to deal with. I see it as punishment enough for you to have acted like you liked me." The parents started laughing when they heard this. Matt's mom said, "Look at these little devils. We weren't even aware of this. They've been after the inheritance." Matt and Ben turned bright red. "Nonsense. We were taking care of Grandpa because he was sick." They started babbling unconvincingly. "We're almost done. Let me finish," the lawyer said, and kept on reading. "And finally, my dear grandson Boris, you've been close to your grandmother and me since the day you started walking. I know I didn't give you enough attention, but you're a good kid. I know you will forgive me for it. Even though I know you loved us without expecting anything in return, I still want to give you a present. When you turn 18, I want you to use half of my fortune to set up a foundation and run it. The foundation is to provide scholarships for poor children and make sure they get a good education. The other half of my fortune is yours. I only have one condition. You are not to give anything to Ben or Matt, so that they learn their lesson." This was totally unexpected on my part. I was so proud that my grandfather trusted me with the responsibility of running such an organization, and I wouldn't have to work, thanks to the money he left me, which meant I could dedicate all of my time to the foundation. Needless to say, that day was a huge disappointment for my cousins. It took them a long time to get over it. Now they're both studying to get into college. My grandfather always said, "You can't take an elevator up to success. You can only reach it by climbing the stairs step by step."